Hello? Okay. Okay, we have Mr. Madheshwar right here. We are still having difficulties with the video. We will try to get that enabled. Mr. Madheshwar, the podium is yours.
Very good morning, everybody. I hope you have been having an interesting morning so far. I know that I've had the pleasure of hearing the last couple of speakers, and I think this is a great opportunity for all the young managers, budding, aspiring managers to be able to know about the things that are kind of happening in the market today, the kind of things that are that are kind of moving the market, the trends, the game changers today right from the horse's mouth. This is a great opportunity, and I think that the KB Institute of Management, the students yourselves, demanding for such initiatives, and the management have done a good job about it. All right, so I'm going to take the next few minutes trying to help understand or share my experiences on change management. I hope you can see the following table of contents. Not sure if you are able to see. I don't know how to get feedback. Just asking somebody, how do I know that they're seeing this screen? Is the screen is something they're seeing? Can you help me with that? Now I want to go to the screen. Go back. No, it's not. Give me a second. Guys, I'm yeah, right. So I hope you can all see the table of contents. Now, the things that I'm planning to cover in this session is a definition of what change management is, the need for a change management within organizations. What is the process that the organizations typically need to use for change management? And as with everything in management, if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. And how do we identify how things go wrong and what are the things that are going wrong? We'll look at a couple of cases, 2 to 3 cases, right? See a good example, a bad example, and a few things about change. And last but not the least, what is in it for you? As students aspiring to be managers tomorrow, what is in it for you? That's going to be the most interesting part. And if time permits, and if the technology permits, I have a small slideshow with music, but I don't know if it'll work. A couple of minutes on in terms of a very small story, an interesting story about an eagle. That's what I'm planning to cover. All right. Okay. So we're just testing it out. So what we're going to attempt to do now is define what change management is. What is change, right? Change can be defined as something that's different than the current state, to alter. It's very simple. The reason you're seeing multiple entries coming in is I was planning to make it as a very interactive session that be more effective. Now trying to change myself to try to talk to an audience which will be talking at the end. So I'm just going to ask my own questions and answer, right? So what is change? Change is something that happens which changes the course of the current action. Examples of change from a very smallest level, right? As an individual, today you're all students. Today you're students, and maybe not maybe, surely in a couple of years maximum, you will be employees in a different organization. Your role changes. So as a person X, as a student, has now become a manager in an organization. Now, can he afford to behave and operate in the same manner how he was doing, say, when he was a student? No, he cannot, right? He has to change. That's one change. The same individual will also get married, become a family man. The same individual will get kids, become a father. The same individual is, assuming it's a man, he has a spouse. For a spouse, he acts as a husband or a wife. For the son or a daughter, he is the father. For his parents and his in-laws, he is like son-in-law or the son. So even in his, with being as one person, he has to act and act differently and operate differently with different stakeholders. Each of them is a change to what he's been doing before till he sets into rhythm. So when a new entity comes into the family, when a new kid is born, a new role is born, and he has to change himself to alter the role. So overall, change is something which all of us go through day in and day out basis. So what's the big deal? So before coming to the session, I was talking to Dr. Vidya and your head to understand whether as part of the curriculum, change management is covered. Now, my understanding goes that in organizational behavior or business process and strategy management, a couple of your courses, change management is alluded to, but not gone into great depth. Then I thought I'll take this subject, talk a few minutes to make you understand a little bit better, because change management is a part of your job, whether you are entry-level manager, middle-level manager, or a senior-level manager. So in essence, a change happens in an organization. So what do you do about it? You let the change happen? No, changes don't happen that easily. You have to kind of manage the change. You have to work around the change. Manage the change in such a way that the change produces the outcome that you desire to get. Sorry, it's okay. The change produces an outcome that you're desired to look for. So how do you manage to do that? Change management. There are many different examples of change management that I can see, and if you go into Google and start looking for good change management, you will get 100 definitions. Overall, I would say that a couple of these bullets will explain. It's the process of developing a planned approach to change in an organization to achieve the desired outcome. That's exactly what I said. Now the change management is often misunderstood as, let's say that my organization, I have a department which is doing data processing. I have 10 people working in data processing, and now I want to bring in a computer to do that. I mean, it's a 40-year back example. When I bring a computer to do that, there are quite a number of things that change. For example, the space requirement changes, the activities that are involved. Earlier it was like multiple steps. Now you feed in into the computer, things come out of the computer. Now there is a 10-man department, those 10 people. Yeah. Now there are 10-man department, there are 10 people. Now those 10 people might not have the skills to operate the computer. Or even if they do have the skills to operate the computer, you may not need 10 people. Now the people, each of these individuals also go through change as you as an organization is changing. Now what's going on in my mind? I'm one of those 10 people. I'm looking at a new computer is coming shipped into the organization, a new room is getting formed. I'm kind of intrigued at the beginning. After a few minutes or a few days, I see that they're setting up certain things, and I don't know whether I will have a part to play in this new organization. Now I'm slightly planning. I don't know what's going to happen to my job. I don't know if I don't have a job, what am I going to do, pay my tuitions for my kids, etc. Now, which basically brings to the point in discussion. There is, apart from the processes involved in making sure a change happens, there is a human side which is involved in any change management exercise. So the human side is the real change management. The actual process changes or definition of the change, all those things, they are not. They're only initial stages. The human change is what I'm talking about. Now, in essence, change management is the people side of it, and it is not the managing technical side, and it is not just the communication plans. Right? So this slide should help us understand what change management is. I want to jump to the next slide, right? The need for change management. 30 years back, right, the organizations were very different. I can still, I don't know how many of you see Tamil movies, Hindi movies, English movies. If you see a movie like 35 years back, an office is defined, an office is stereotyped, right? You get into a room with, very long room, 6 desks on either side with chairs, people sitting with, a bunch of files on them. They look at the files, sign, write, keep, write, say. That's what they say. But today the organizations are different. This is a very basic way of explaining how things have changed in the last 30 years. Now, behind these 30-year changes, a lot of things have happened. Trends, technological trends changed. Work patterns, employment and work patterns changed. 30 years back, you don't see many women working in a company. Now you see a lot of women working in the organization. How many of 30 years back, you didn't see so many women or ladies going to school. but we want them to go to school, right? We want all of us to work together now. Unions are stronger. Unions have become stronger and weaker. Capitalism changes. Geopolitical economic changes. Outsourcing has become the norm. US geopolitical changes, for example, they want to do outsourcing, but if they do outsourcing, they don't get the works for the things. That's one. Cost challenges. We want to do everything. Today's world, we want to do everything faster, cheaper, better. The emergence of the internet calendar, right? For example, every 4 months there's a cyber year today. So these things have changed. And you, in your strategy management course, you would be talking about mergers, acquisitions, etc. What are mergers and acquisitions? A company buys over another company. What happens? There are two different cultures merging together. Now you don't know what the resultant culture is. There is change there. Now, basically, anything and everything is changed. This is with respect to organizational behavior. Individuals as us, we change. Now we grow, we change, we evolve. And there is change management required. If we do not manage change, then it is chaos. I'll give an example of chaos a little later, and I think I'm taking a lot more time than I'm supposed to, but I hope he doesn't throw me away from this room. So till the time I'm not thrown away, I'm going to keep speaking.
You got all the time you want.
Right. So in essence, what we see is the only constant is going to be the change. Change is inevitable. So this is something you keep on hearing, and I just want to take a time out to take a detour of it, right? This is where I would have loved to have interaction with you, but I'm just going to ask the question and leave it for you to ponder over. All of us hopefully have the habit of reading books. Who Moved My Cheese is one very, very key management book people keep talking about that talks about change management. Lee Iacocca, the change manager, the person who actually transformed the superstar, right? Who transformed Chrysler organization. He's a great case of change management. Well, as I said, this is where I would have discussed with you, talked about those cases. But now I'm going to leave it for you to make note of it. And if you have read these good books, great. Goal, for example, great. If you have not, make note of it. Go back and make it a point to read. Right. Right. Moving on to next slide. Right. So now you should be seeing a slide with some text on the right side and a graph on the right side. Now, what has changed, right? I'm going to read a few things from there. When an organization embarks to make some changes to their existing system, what do they normally say? I should have really written they in a quote. They as the employees. Typically, the change mandate comes from the upper level, top management. So anything as an employee of the organization, something comes from the change management, I'm a little nervous. Things which I think, right, this is a waste of time, right? Why change if it's working fine before? It's not broke, don't fix it. Well, all you see is that, you can read from your screens, right? I doubt they really sees about it, and I don't know if you're having the habit of reading the Dilbert comic representation of the management of comedy, right? Or how do I put it? Cartoon, management cartoon. There is a whole series about change. So change is something we don't like. When something changes, right? When my organization changes, as a result, I get a different job where I have to learn something, I don't like it. So the natural reaction for human beings, and hence extrapolated to a bigger entity, aggregated to an organization as well, is resistance. Resistance is the natural reaction to change. So let's say when an organization comes in, takes over your company, and the organization wants to operate slightly differently. Obviously, you cannot have two companies within a company. So when that happens, what do we do? Difficult things, right? There are a lot of difficulties, people resist. But as managers, as leaders, as tomorrow's leaders and managers, you have the responsibility to take the organization to the next level, and you have to lead it. So some of these facts, for example, if you take any corporate initiative, right, 28% of them, this is an IBM study, by the way, I'm happy to say that, 28% of them are abandoned, right, because you don't get the sponsorship. 41% over budget. 80%, well, I do the change for the sake of doing the change, but nobody really uses it. Now, you see on the right side, there is some statistic, right, that says that about 46%, right, they feel that, they disagree that their organization is actually managing the people side of the change better. These are all the responses to change, and hence the need to manage change better. I think that's pretty much it. There is a need for change. There will be a resistance for change, and you have a mandate as leaders or managers of tomorrow to ensure those changes are successful that bring the desired outcome, right? So far we've seen all those things. Now, next 1 or 2 slides we see how we make that happen. I hope you can see a garland kind of a picture, right? So this is, well, there are, I mean, again, I have to warn you that don't stop with my lecture or my piece of 2 cents on change management. This is one of the many theories or many change management processes that have been in practice or have been propagated. There are many others. You can see change out. If I want to increase, when I want to kind of set up a change, they say unfreeze, flexibilize it and freeze it. That's one way of looking at it. But John Kotter is a change management guru, and his theories are kind of well respected and with respect to change management process. I'm seeing Kumar coming. Am I shooting over time? Are you okay with me?
You have another 10 minutes.
Thanks.
And then we'll have another 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes for questions. So
yes, so fine. So let's see that. So these step changes, right? So here I'm not going to spend a lot of time. It's going to be kind of self-explaining. I'm going to take an example and then talk about it. Increase urgency, build the guiding team, get the vision right, blah, 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 blah. Everything seems, very simple, straightforward. But is it really that straightforward? So I'm going to take, we management fellows love case studies, right? We like to talk about other people's problems. We don't want to talk about a problem. So I'll take a case study. It's a real case of my example. And again, so far we were talking about mergers, acquisitions, etc. Now this is, well, not all of us will be actually talking to 2 different companies and signing, even in a retired career. But we'll have, as leaders, need to support changes at our own level. For me, I lead an organization of about 600 people within IBM. And well, 3 years back, there are about that organization. We had, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Bangalore demography. It's a very, very clumsy place, right? Coimbatore is a lovely place compared to that. And then the traffic is unbelievably obscene. You just can't go from one part of the town to another part of the town. In that case, what happens is, now we decided from the management side, or not we, normally as anything, my management decided that the cost of operations in that particular part of the city was very expensive, and we found an integrated, separate facility for IBM about 25 kilometers out of the city. So we wanted to move there. So the biggest program that had to move was my program. So when we said that, hey, tomorrow we move from, let's say, we were in Koramangala to Whitefields. To just put things into perspective, somebody who wants to move the office from, how do I put it in Coimbatore terms, somewhere in Gandhipuram, right, or 100 feet road to Karmatambatti, or maybe Chekalur, or somewhere about 30 kilometers away where nobody lives and people don't want to go. There was a huge dissatisfaction, unrest. Then we went through this process, a very clear step-by-step management, change management process. We had to actually make a sense of urgency, make it happen that, look, this is important, this is something, there is an objective, we need to make it happen. We put together a charter and build the guiding team. The guiding team is the key there. The guiding team is not going to be just the leaders. The guiding team has to be made up of a lot of more individuals within the team. So out of the 600 people, we've roughly framed it about 10 teams and got representatives of 3 people per team. So we have about 30 members, which each of these 30 members could talk to 20 members each, and they can represent the 20 members' views. We had a 1-month program on understanding how we'll manage the change. So guess what? People who were actually talking bad about the change, when they started getting involved in it, they started seeing the good side of it. We also gave real good vision statement. For example, why we are changing and what's in it for you as an employee. We were able to give that. We were able to bring in something called a new employee transportation scheme. So we brought in buses, and then we subsidized the cost. So at the end of which, we actually were able to communicate to buy, right? We were able to communicate in such a way that the people bought in the change. They were able to see that today I'm spending 2,000 rupees, using 1,500 rupees per month on fuel. If I'm coming by own car, or let's say if I'm coming by bike, I'm spending much more. Tomorrow, I don't have to drive in this chaotic Bangalore situation. I can get onto a bus. I have a subsidized transport. That bus is dedicated from my house to the office, and I just can sit and do my job. And then it's much subsidized, half the cost it takes for my two-wheeler or four-wheeler. We did that. Empowered action. We actually empowered the employees to decide the mode of transportation, what kind of buses, how long the buses, what are the routes, everything. So in each of these cases, every stage we had a review, we ensured people are successful, etc. There were problems, people didn't want to do that, we didn't let up, we just didn't let people not do it. So when these whole things done, we found that in 3 months time when we actually moved, it became a very, very seamless exercise. Now, this trivial example of ensuring a 600-member company moves from Gandhipuram to Chenimalai might look very simple, but to make that happen, we can put processes, we can get buses, we can get routes, etc. But when it becomes really successful is when people buy in and start utilizing that. And that's exactly we kind of accomplished that. And I think that's a great example, and there are many examples we can talk about. This is one great example where I can talk with conviction as to what my example is. The next slide actually gives the details, and when you go through it, you can see that I talked about each and every point in my, what we did. Okay, I'm having 3 cases. I'm not sure. Can I talk about 3 cases? I should take one of the cases.
One case.
Okay. So I'm hoping that Kumar can give some handouts to some of these people if needed. We'll send out the presentations so you can read about it. The case study 1 is a Schroeder and SSB, which is banking majors mergers, the difficulties and how it happened. So I'm not going to talk about it. Only point I wanted to talk about is the last point, which is when you're doing change, there are a lot of culture issues. There are big pitfalls, and it is insane to lose sight of these influences. Ensure that you take care of these cultural issues. That's one. Chrysler story. I am not going to talk about it, but I am pretty sure 50% of the audience at least would have read the Lee Iacocca story. Iacocca, if you have not read, please read. It's an amazing book. It's not just change management. It is overall management, leadership, how actually one should take the problems by the balls. It's something you have to learn from that book. It's a great book. Please read. The last one is I'll take a few minutes about talking about the great Indian motorcycle market case. I'm an old man, right? So in my growing up days, and most of you, hopefully the professors or if not the students, you'll know that when we were growing up as kids, as boys, you always dreamt of having a motorcycle. So the only motorcycles that I could see on the road in all boosters, there were 3 motorcycles, right? Today you have CBZs, Pulsars, Unicorns and whatnot, which I don't know what it is. Those days we had Bullet, right? You had ESD, which is Java, and you had Rajdoot. Only 3 motorbikes. No other bikes were there. Or maybe 1 or 2 were there, but which is not something good. Until the early 80s, these companies were doing good. Escorts and Java and Enfield was doing an amazing job. Boom, what happens? Early 80s, Japan decides to enter the Indian automobile industry, early stages or much before even liberalization era. So Suzuki comes in and they make something called In-Suzuki, right? Honda comes in, they make Hero Honda with Hero Cycles, right? Hero Corporation of India. And then you suddenly see a new breed of vehicles in the market. You see 100 cc's, until that only 150, 175, 200 big ones. You see people, until then you've been seeing people standing in all corners of the roads and kicking and kicking and kicking the bike till it gets started. And suddenly you see these sleek guys, one kick start, zoop, zoop, zoom, right? And I can even remember a commercial, Zip, Zap, Zoom is one of those commercials for one of those two-wheelers. I don't know which one, may not be relevant, but they actually took the key problem and used that as their advantage. Now what happened? Once these 3 things come into picture, that actually redefined the market. Each of these players, they responded in very different way. Now, this is a great example of a single case talking about three different situations. Java and SD, they did not change. They thought that they came with a version called Road King, and those of the motorcycle enthusiasts and some professors can actually nod with me if you were aware of these motorcycles. Java and SD not there in the market anymore. They are all vintage pieces. The company in the back of Mysore, southern south of Mysore, is still there with no operations and no output, only some clerks going and coming. God knows why. But Java and SD are out of the market because they thought they will be able to survive with their own means of their own ways of working. They didn't change. So they are dead today. Bullet and Enfield. This is an interesting story, and this is something you should learn not to do it, because this Bullet actually banked on its luck. That also almost went out of extinction. They made some attempts. They made some sleeker vehicles. They didn't take support from others, but they did themselves, but they were not successful because they did not have the technology at that point of time, and also the management thought process that came in along with the Japanese coming in, the TQMs and JITs and etc., which you guys will be much more familiar on the jargons than I am. But then they are still surviving today, and they are doing good today, not because of their change management, because the world around changed, and just they happen to be in the place that they're successful. It's just by sheer luck they're successful. Rajdoot, Escort Motors, they changed. They embraced challenge. They actually got into a tie-up with Yamaha Corporation, and they came up with a Yamaha line of motorcycles. They phased out Rajdoot. Rajdoot and Bobby were, the heartthrob vehicles for the Romeos of 1970s and early 80s. But they realized that they cannot survive in this market. They changed. But they changed not with their strategy alone, but also operationally they changed. They ensured that they partnered with the right people, they got the right technologies, they brought in the right management principles, quality principles, reduced costs. And today, even today, they are redefining the market. The latest R15 is coming from them. It's one of the most successful vehicles of late. Is it R15 if I'm right? I'm not on top of this market. So this is one real interesting example, right? So, right, a few facts about change. I'll just let you read. I'll just pick up a couple of things and read. All that you have to understand is
1 minute to go.
Yeah, all that you'll have to understand is change will not stop. It will just only go faster and faster and faster. And if you're not changing, you're dead. But while doing that, understanding certain things, you also need to remember that change management should be about people, not about processes, should be about people. I need a couple of minutes. It's really interesting, and it's something. The last slide, before the short story slide. Why change now? Why are we talking about change? Why are we not studying about change management, etc.? There are often many bullets you will read. I think it's something I think you have to keep in mind, and I would really request the professors to reiterate when you're talking, right? You see organization behavioral as a course. You read business project process and strategic management as a course in your curriculum. When you do that, there are many bullets you see. I understood that change management is just a bullet in your in the whole subject. Likewise, you'll have many small bullets. Strategy management will be a small chapter on this. But these are all big functions in today's industry. The world was, is, and will be changing. So each of these bullets, right? It's important that you understand what it means. You don't have to by heart any of them. You just have to understand. And for you to understand, I would, again, I would love to talk about cases after cases after cases, and I'll probably spend some time once I get opportunity some later. But I would relate for each of the bullet. Remember taking a small case and relate to it. That will help you understand better. And then coming back to the topic, world is, was, and will be changing. New trends will be emerging. And there are some of these things like QR code. There is barcode, now you have quick response code. Cloud computing, it's not cloud, it's cloud computing, the same the previous panelist, Mr. Sudhakar, was talking about. Cloud computing. What's cloud computing? How many of us know what cloud computing is? Smarter planet, enterprise 2.0. Social networking. I'm sure that you guys are much familiar with social networking than me. I would love to ask how many of you do not have Facebook face-to-face. Community-based approach for anything and everything. Development, crowdsourcing as an operation. IT being looked at as commercialization rather than anything. And then there's something, keep in mind, mobility, right? Anything and everything is done through cell phones or anything mobile. Mobility is the key. and information. We are past the age of data management, or data load, data analysis, etc. Today it's all about we have too much information. Too much information, but I would say 50% of that information is noise really. So you need to be able to make sense out of the data, and that's where your analytics as a great field is emerging. Analytics is a wonderful field that's emerging. Analytics, and I'm not sure if you've heard about it. Darwin's engine, which is just one of these websites you should go about. It's kind of the advanced search, the relevant life search within internet. There are a lot of these things. I think these keywords, like QR code, cloud computing, each of these things, I think you should take note of what these things are, because I don't know everything. Half of them I know, and half of them I went into Darwinian engine and figured out what's the current things that people are talking about. You know why we have to do that? We have to do that because these are the things that are happening, and these are the things that will move your industry. These are game changers, and for that, your organization should respond. And if your organization doesn't respond, you're dead. And how your organization responds is all about changing, transformation, transition. That brings to the last point. Some 4 bullets I put in, like BPR, business process reengineering, strategy and change department, change manager, change champion, transition, transfer management. What are these? These are some of the departments or divisions within an organization that have come into existence in the last maybe 10 years or 15 years or so. Transition, transformation. It's all about change. Management today is all about change. Leadership is basically taking through an organization and your people through the change. So these opportunities are going to come up. These organizations are about to come up with many of such roles, and for that you need to be prepared. You can be prepared by being on your toes with respect to information and being aware of the trends in the market and knowing how to respond to it. So I think that brings me to the end of it. I have one small story. Do you want to do it?
We can share it when we upload the slides. We can share it along with the slides.
Yeah,
we're out of time. We have to reconvene. So
it's about Eagle. It's very interesting. I would urge at least the college to do it. If you're not done, it's a pretty good thing. You just do it. It's just a very simple thing. So that brings to the end of my presentation. So off to you guys, and it was very nice talking to you. Hopefully,
let's open up the floor for panelists to ask questions. Panelists, attendees, whoever has a question, please chime in.
Background white
Hello, I'm hearing a lot of static on the background. Any questions from the attendees? Okay, type your questions in the chat window if you have one. One of the questions that we have here is, what are the tips that you would give to handle people who resist change? What are the tips that you would give to those people? How to handle people who resist change?
That's a great question. I don't know who asked this question. That's a real good question. So let's go back to, I'll just allude to the change management process. One of the things, go to the next slide. Yeah. So one of the things which actually this process is addressing is how to handle change, how to ensure that the resistance is minimum. Couple of things I can, 3 things which I can bring to your knowledge. One is build the guiding team. You involve the people who have to change as part of the change. Make them the change enablers. Make them the change leaders or change enablers or change champions. Once you get their buy-in, they will do the rest of the things for you. And for that to be done, you have to ensure that you have to do two things. You cannot lose trust, right? One, you have to be honest about it, but you have to communicate at the same time for buy-in. You just can't communicate. For example, as in my example, we are moving to Karmathumati day after tomorrow, all of you come in. People will leave you, just run away. But instead of it, communicate to them on how and why this is important, how we are planning to do it, and how it is good for you also. So once you do that, people will naturally join. Now, one of the myths is people will not take change. People will embrace change with proper approach, and that's what this process talks about.
Wonderful. Any other questions from any attendees here? I'm going to enable unmute all the attendees. Let's see if any of you have any questions. Any questions from the attendees? Okay, so that is lunch. That brings us to lunchtime. I would like to thank Mr. Magadeshwaran for taking his time from his very busy schedule and be with us. Traveled a long way, and I really appreciate your input on change management. This is a very brand new topic for many of our students, and these current headaches that comes with change management. It's good to know them so that we will be ready to face them. Thank you. Audience and panelists, we will reconvene at 1 p.m. Eastern time, Indian Standard Time. Again, 1 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Please come back and join us after lunch. Thank you.